In a series that was tied with Cleveland bringing momentum to Boston with them, or that was the presumption. Instead, LeBron James had a curious lack of energy. Ty Lue spoke after the game about LeBron looking fatigued. Here, you saw a pass, it's a turnover, and then he hits the deck, trying to feed LeBron. There's another turnover. Boston with a 10-point lead. Yeah, Smith looked to be just frustrated there with the defense. Tries a one-handed cross-court bounce pass, as that's on me. Nearly as many turnovers as field goals in the first quarter. Down 13, Jason Tatum, the kid's 20. Team high 24. Marcus Smart hitting threes. Terry Rozier hitting. Morris hitting. One of those nights, they missed, 15 dunks or layups in the Game 4 loss? They had 9 threes in the first half in this one. They just 8 two-point field goals, so they were playing the modern game here in transition. Bounce pass is stolen. That leads to a 3 on the other end. The Celtics lead was always comfortable. Then trying to thread the needle. And it wasn't just the turnovers, the turnovers turned into fast break points or opportunities to get to the line. The frustration of James was evident. He had 6 turnovers. 14-point game, then a wild pass from Love out of the post. Energy from Tatum. The defense was the topic as Jaylen Brown visited with me. We promised him he's on the way to talk back. I'm sorry, buddy. What are you? You turn into a pumpkin in 5 minutes?
This reminded me of like one of those movies where dudes are breaking in, they're crawling around with all the red laser beams. They got to avoid them because that ball went through 3 different legs.
Nobody in the world better at the touchscreen than you.
The last thing he wants is to get boomed on by this guy.
Look at the vision code. Look at the concentration.
You were like a kid on Christmas, like running around pictures, the whole bit. What would rub Tim Legler the wrong way?
Guy probably would really irritate me.
You'd get 20 right now against him.
Oh, I would love to get out there. You and I were a little two-man. Are you kidding me?
Tim Legler here, and I mentioned that Ty Lue talked fatigue with LeBron, which was something that you noticed early. You were surprised?
I made a note 5 minutes into the game. It's one of the first notes I wrote down tonight was, why is LeBron grabbing his shorts and bending over on a free throw attempt 5-6 minutes into the game? It just didn't look right.
And is that something that you felt bled into the entire team's sort of demeanor?
Definitely. I mean, they're going to feed off of this guy's energy level. He's been sensational. Obviously, what he has done in the postseason is almost superhuman. But tonight, for whatever reason, he just didn't have it. His biorhythms were not working for him tonight.
And I would just say you're allowed to be a human being.
No doubt, no doubt. But you know, you think back, there's been moments early in his career before he went to Miami the first time. He had a couple of these moments in strange times, in postseason games. I haven't seen it in forever. So it's not pressure. It's not any of those things. For whatever reason, he just couldn't get his body working right tonight.
And when I say did it bleed into the performance, what can you show us about the defensive end?
Yeah, you know, Scott, in a game like this, I just think you have to play desperate, and I don't think Cleveland did at any point. They weren't sharp. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of what I'm talking about. Now, here, on a situation where, you know, LeBron basically backs down Tatum, gets to the rim, and that ball goes in the hoop. On a made layup, there is no excuse that you should give up something really easy in transition, but take a look what's going on here. I mean, okay, so let's start up here. Like, Kevin Love, he has no idea where the ball is. Like, he's running to the other side of the floor. Nance is sort of side shuffling instead of being in a dead sprint to get back. LeBron, he's here. He's somewhat in a jog mode. J.R. Smith's backpedaling. Here comes the ball being driven right up your backside. And what happens, this initial surge? Well, now you get an overreaction to that, and you're going to see now a trailer right here. Ball's kicked out. They scramble. You end up with a wide-open 3 by Jaylen Brown on a play in which you scored a layup. You should be able to get back, have better defensive balance. Here's another example of just not being sharp. Here they come. You got numbers on the break. LeBron James has to understand this is Jason Terry right here. Right? Jason Terry's probably going to play this pass. If you're LeBron, Rozier, I'm sorry. If you're LeBron, you got to take this thing right here to the rim. Instead, look at this casual pass. Stolen. So now you had numbers. What does that lead to typically? If you turn the ball over when you've got numbers in transition, it's going to lead to something good on the other end. Jason Tatum knocks down the 3. I just thought Boston played with an appropriate level of urgency, and Cleveland, to me, just didn't have it. And maybe it did feed off of LeBron's lack of energy, but because this was one of his weaker playoff games, even though his numbers are still pretty good.
All right, we got to get out of here, but does Boston win this series?
Yeah, I thought they were going to win it all along. They're a better team. They've got more guys that can hurt you, more guys do more things on the court. It will go 7 games. But I think Boston, they win all 4 home games in this series.
And Vegas will make them an underdog at home again. They've been basically that throughout, and they just keep winning and winning and winning.
No Kyrie, no Gordon Hayward, and they get to the finals.
Amazing.
What a story that would be.
Appreciate the time. Games. They're now 10-0 at home in the playoffs, even though this was their worst shooting game of the playoffs. By rule, if Cleveland wants to advance to the finals, they're going to have to win here Sunday if they win at home on Friday. Boston hasn't done much to think that Boston can win in Cleveland. As for the hows and whys, we've got an hour to talk about them. And let's begin with Jeff Van Gundy, who joins us. And, Jeff, I understand a young Boston team getting it home, riding the wave of that building and being great. But I don't necessarily understand what accounts for Cleveland's performance in this series on the road. What do you make of that?
Well, they got off to another bad start here in Boston. You know, it's been a series so far of first quarter blowouts, which has put the team behind in a big hole. And then throughout the game, they neither shot well enough nor played like inspired enough basketball to put together a sustained run. And so they find themselves in a hole going back home. And as you said, now they have to win 2 in a row.
You've been consistent throughout that Boston's the better basketball team, but Cleveland is a team that has more veterans, and obviously they've got LeBron James. So if Cleveland is going to figure this out and win those 2 games, what's that look like? What does the path, Jeff, include?
Well, I think it starts with James being great. I thought, he had a game that was very forgettable tonight. He continues to turn the ball over at a high rate. Defensively, not as energetic as we saw in Cleveland, particularly in Game 3. And so he's going to have to be great, but he's got to get some help.
Yep.
Love, I thought, had a good game. Everybody else had a very, very below-average offensive output.
Jeff, appreciate the time. I look forward to watching you all on Friday evening.
All right, take care.
Before we get to Paul Pierce, you can catch all of the post-game press conferences over on ESPN. Are they on ESPN2, Tom? ESPN2? All right, but here's Ty Lue, apparently quite exasperated. I'll buy it.
Front row, Dave.
David Quinn on ESPN. Ty, you guys had a 9-0 run. I think they cut it to 12 in the fourth quarter and then had 4 empty possessions in a row. Was that just missed shots on your part, or going back on it, did you feel like Boston did something to throw you off your game in that moment?
I mean, in that position, in that moment, we're probably playing pretty desperate. But, defensively holding his team with 36% from the field, it was a good job, and we gave up a lot of stuff, like, their speed and their quickness in transition. We didn't get back to low to Jaylen Brown. He got to the free throw line a bunch of times. Terry Rozier, Jason Tatum, we didn't get back, show a crowd. He was able to get to the free throw line. So we had, a lot of mistakes that we could have cleaned up. But, overall, they scored 96 points and shoot 36%. We got to be able to score the basketball. Joe.
They weren't. Paul Pierce joins us now, and Coach alluded to Jason Tatum. He had 24, 7 rebounds, 4 steals, 2 blocks. The last Celtic to do that in a playoff game was you in 2003. These youngsters are playing at a level higher, Paul, than we're accustomed to seeing young players perform in the playoffs. What do you attribute that to?
I attribute that to Brad Stevens, just allowing them guys to go out there and make the mistakes throughout the regular season. And then when the injury to Kyrie Irving happened, it was just like, what else can he do? He's like, all right, you guys, it's on your shoulders. Jason, it's time for you to grow up. Jaylen, time to grow up. Rozier, it's time to grow up. Y'all getting the opportunity, and they've just thrived with the opportunity. And who would have thought there'll be one game from the finals, especially when Kyrie went down?
The first quarter of their first game, they lose Hayward, then they lose Kyrie in the wintertime here, and you think, how are they going to respond? Well, as you say, they're a game away. But, Paul, you're very familiar with how LeBron James performs when backed into a corner. You had countless encounters with him where the numbers would indicate he's different. The numbers would indicate you see a different LeBron. Do you recall that he's different? Do you recall him playing different?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. When his back is against the wall, he's going to step up. Just like the 2008 Game 7, he came with 45. So they have to be ready for that, just mentally, physically, and just to withstand LeBron's run, because he's gonna leave it all out there. And just like in Game 6, when he was with the Miami Heat in 2012, he came into Boston and put one of his greater games on. So Boston has to be prepared for that, not only in Game 6 if they don't win that game, but Game 7 also in the Boston Garden, because he's done it before. He's went to the Boston Garden and had a tremendous game. So they got to know it's going to be tough to put a LeBron James team out of the playoffs.
But, Paul, just to piggyback what Jeff said, LeBron can't do this on his own. They lost Game 2 where LeBron had 42 points. I mean, if the supporting cast does not contribute, I don't care how great LeBron is, I don't believe that they can win without help. Do you feel that way?
Absolutely right. I mean, when the rest of your starters outside of Kevin Love, the rest of your starters only give you 10 points. None of them even had double figures between JR and Tristan Thompson. These guys got to step up. Those are the veteran guys who's been there before. They've been to the finals. They've been down 3-1. So they understand what it takes. They have to help them out more if they don't want to go home in Game 6.
Well, I mentioned you in relation to Tatum. You know that secret sauce. You were able to beat LeBron a couple of occasions in closeout games, but it will be a tall order for this young Boston team, Paul. Appreciate the time and look forward to visiting again throughout the final somewhere, all right?
All right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
SportsCenter on the road is confidently presented by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans.
Much more reaction on the way from Boston. Tim Legler. I think we saw yet another example of poor Cavs defense after we saw an example of great Cavs defense. And